On Monday morning, Donald Trump made an announcement that stopped the world in its tracks. After weeks of relentless bombing, after oil prices exploding to levels not seen in modern history, after 3 U.S. aircraft carriers positioned in the Middle East, Trump said the guns were going quiet. A 5-day pause, a ceasefire in everything but name. He said talks were happening. He said there was progress. He even suggested a full deal might be on the table. And then Iran spoke. Within hours, Tehran called the whole thing a lie. Not a misunderstanding, not a miscommunication, a deliberate lie, fake news, they said, designed to manipulate global oil markets and buy the United States more time to regroup. The Iranian parliament speaker went on X and wrote it in plain terms. No negotiations have been held with the U.S. Full stop. For years, people assumed the U.S.-Iran standoff was just that, a standoff. Threats, counter-threats, sanctions, rhetoric. A geopolitical chess match where nobody ever actually flipped the board. Then, February 28, 2026 happened. In the early hours of that morning, the United States and Israel launched simultaneous surprise airstrikes across multiple sites in Iran. No final warning, no last-minute diplomatic scramble, just bombs. The strikes targeted military installations, nuclear-adjacent facilities, and key leadership infrastructure. Iran's supreme leader was reportedly targeted in the opening hours, a detail that sent shockwaves through the entire region and beyond. Iran's response was immediate. Within days, they shut down the Strait of Hormuz, the narrow waterway through which roughly 20% of the world's oil supply flows every single day. That one move didn't just escalate a military conflict, it triggered a global economic crisis. Brent crude prices shot past $100 per barrel and kept climbing, hitting 126 hours before the dust even began to settle. Dubai crude reached a staggering $166.80 per barrel. Gas stations in Europe and Asia were raising prices by the hour. Markets were in freefall. The first week was chaos. U.S. and Israeli warplanes pounded Iranian military assets around the clock. Iran retaliated by striking U.S. bases in the region and launching drone attacks on Gulf states. Dubai International Airport, one of the busiest in the world, was hit by Iranian drones during the second week. The images went viral instantly. By the second week, a third U.S. aircraft carrier had joined the fight. The USS George H.W. Bush was dispatched to the Middle East, joining 2 others already in the region. The British carrier HMS Prince of Wales was placed on advanced readiness. What started as a 2-nation strike had become something that looked increasingly like a coalition war. The third week brought a new level of escalation. The U.S. launched a massive bombing raid on Kharg Island, at a name most people outside the oil industry had never heard, but one that suddenly became globally significant. Kharg Island handles 90% of Iran's oil exports. Striking it wasn't just a military move, it was a message, and oil markets heard it loud and clear. Prices had surged more than 40% since the war began. J.P. Morgan warned that Iraqi and Kuwaiti oil production could be halted within days if the Strait of Hormuz stayed closed, a potential loss of 4.7 million barrels per day. Iran told reporters it might only have around 1,000 ballistic missiles left after a week of sustained fighting. That number sounds like a lot until you realize how many had already been launched, and what it means for how long Tehran can sustain this level of warfare. Monday morning, Trump logs on to Truth Social. And what he posts isn't a battle update or a victory lap. It's something else entirely. He writes that the U.S. and Iran have had very good and productive conversations regarding a complete and total resolution of our hostilities over the past 2 days. He says his Department of War, in a name change he made official earlier this year, has been ordered to postpone any and all military strikes against Iranian power plants and energy infrastructure for a 5-day period. He calls it conditional on the success of ongoing talks, but the message is clear. The bombs are paused. Then he picks up the phone with CNBC. He tells Joe Kernan they are very intent on making a deal. He claims Jared Kushner and his special envoy Steve Witkoff sat down with a senior Iranian official on Sunday night and reached major points of agreement. One of those alleged agreements? Iran committed to never possessing a nuclear weapon. He even suggests the Strait of Hormuz could be reopened very soon if this works out. Global oil markets reacted instantly. Prices dropped. Traders exhaled. For a moment, it looked like the worst-case scenario might be averted. But that moment didn't last long. Tehran's response: fake news. While Trump was still talking to CNBC, Iran's foreign ministry was drafting its rebuttal, and they didn't mince words. The foreign ministry spokesperson Esmail Bagay went on record stating that no negotiations had taken place between Tehran and Washington. No meetings, no agreements, no major points, nothing. He confirmed only that initiatives were in place through third-party nations to reduce tensions, a careful diplomatic non-answer that admitted almost nothing. Then Iran's parliament speaker Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf went further. He took to X and wrote, "No negotiations have been held with the U.S. Fake news is used to manipulate the financial and oil markets and to escape the quagmire in which the U.S. and Israel are trapped." Read that again. The Speaker of Iran's parliament, one of the country's most powerful officials, accused the sitting U.S. president of fabricating diplomatic progress, not to make peace, but to crash oil prices and buy time for more bombing. Here's where it gets genuinely murky, because it turns out something is happening, just not what either side is describing publicly. NPR confirmed that back-channel communications are underway. Countries like Pakistan, Egypt, and Turkey are actively facilitating dialogue and de-escalation efforts between Washington and Tehran. Iran's foreign ministry, while denying direct talks, confirmed they are responding to overtures through intermediaries from friendly nations. So there are conversations, just not the direct, high-level, deal-making sessions Trump described. The distinction matters enormously. Back-channel messaging through a third-party intermediary is standard diplomatic groundwork. It's how hostile nations feel each other out without publicly committing to anything. It is not the same as sitting down with a senior Iranian official on a Sunday night and walking away with major points of agreement. Arms control analysts pointed to a deeper problem. Steve Witkoff, the man Trump sent to negotiate, reportedly showed up to multiple sessions without sufficient technical expertise on Iran's nuclear program. Experts at the Arms Control Association noted that Witkoff appeared to believe Iran had been engaged in weaponization efforts since 2003, a significant mischaracterization. He reportedly misunderstood Iran's positions and nuclear posture throughout the process. One analyst put it bluntly, any more experienced diplomat would not have been surprised by Iran's reactions. So when Trump claims his envoy secured a commitment that Iran will never possess a nuclear weapon, the people who actually study this stuff are skeptical, very skeptical. Step back from the daily headlines for a second and look at the bigger picture, because there are a few things worth noting about the timing of Trump's announcement. Oil prices had been hammering the American economy for weeks. Every single barrel over $100 a barrel is a political liability. Gasoline prices, shipping costs, consumer inflation, all of it feeds directly into public approval numbers. Trump announcing a pause, even if the details were fuzzy, sent prices downward almost immediately. Iran's parliament speaker noticed that too. His fake news to manipulate oil markets accusation wasn't just political posturing, it was a specific targeted claim about economic motive. There's also the question of Israel. When Trump announced the 5-day pause on strikes against Iranian energy infrastructure, no one from the Israeli government confirmed they were on board. Reports noted it was not clear whether Israel, which has been bombing Iran together with the United States, was on board with the proposal. A pause that only one half of a two-nation military coalition agrees to isn't really a pause. Meanwhile, the Pentagon didn't exactly stand down. Even as Trump was talking about deals and dialogue, the military ordered 2,000 airborne troops to deploy to the region. Dozens of fighter planes and bombers remained spread across the Middle East, at bases in the Gulf, and at the British Diego Garcia base deep in the Indian Ocean. That's not the posture of a military winding down. That's a military keeping its foot on the gas while the press conference runs. Here's where things stand right now. Trump's 5-day pause began Monday. That means, by his own stated terms, the bombing could resume as early as the weekend, or extend if talks he claims are happening somehow materialize into something real. Just days before making the pause announcement, Trump had been in a completely different register. Asked about the possibility of talks with Iran, he told reporters bluntly, "I don't want to do a ceasefire. Any halt to military actions would be pointless when you're literally obliterating the other side." That was Friday. By Monday, he was announcing a pause and claiming productive conversations. The whiplash is hard to follow. And that might be the point. In a conflict where information is a weapon, where oil prices respond to rumors, where both sides are watching each other's domestic politics as closely as their military positioning, controlling the narrative is just as important as controlling the battlefield. Trump knows how to dominate a news cycle. Whether this pause becomes a turning point or a footnote depends on what happens in the next 96 hours. Iran has said it won't negotiate under the barrel of a gun. Washington says it won't lift military pressure until Iran opens the strait and gives up its nuclear ambitions permanently. Those are not positions that meet in the middle easily. The Strait of Hormuz remains closed. Global oil markets remain volatile. 2,000 additional U.S. troops are headed to the region. And somewhere in the gap between Trump's truth social posts and Tehran's official denials, the actual shape of this conflict is being decided, probably in conversations that neither side will publicly admit are happening. Whether that's diplomacy or deception, or both at once, might be the most important question nobody has a clean answer to right now. One thing is certain, the 5-day clock is ticking. And when it runs out, the world will find out whether this pause was the beginning of the end of the war, or just a brief intermission before the next escalation.